Excellent. So people are rocking in. So my thesis is Agile isn't dead, it's just grown up. So what I explore over the next 30 minutes is, as Jürgen was saying yesterday, we need to be more Agile now. The whole premise of agility is there, but lazy Agile, Agile theater, we're past it. Let's play a game. Would you play a game? Yeah. Oh, would you do me a favor? Would you stand up, please, if you've ever been in an Agile adoption? If you've ever been in an organization that's done an Agile transformation, Agile adoption. Cool. All right, so, or put your hand up or indication. Now, sit down if you think it was unsuccessful. All right, look around. So there's less. Now take it further. Sit down if the changes did not extend beyond 1 or 2 teams. Now look around. What you're experiencing is shock and awe. And I think it's because of the product purism, the Agile purism. It doesn't work. It missed the whole point of agility. And if we think about it, Agile is over 30. Agile's middle-aged, right? So we've got the new product development game came out in the mid-80s. Agile methods were developed mid-90s. Like XP was being developed around the same time as Scrum. And there's lots of sharing and iteration of ideas. And the Scrum Guide is deliberately incomplete. Like, it didn't come into existence until 2010 because Ken and Jeff were saying, hey, the whole point of this is you think for yourself. The problem with common sense is that it's not common. And then you've got the Manifesto for Agile Software Development in 2001. And people started to do it. So if you've been doing Agile for long enough, you've seen the flavors of it come and go. And then people got really frustrated with Scrum and the tie-in because they over-capitalized on it and said, oh, it's all about the ceremonies. And that's a trigger word for me because there are no ceremonies in Scrum. They're events for a reason. And so they binned that, and then they went to Kanban in the mid 2000s, right? Oh, like, our team doesn't do Scrum well, let's go to Kanban. So instead of sucking at Scrum, they then went on and advanced to sucking at Kanban. And then organizations saw 1 or 2 teams flourishing, and the bigger organizations, well, we want some of that. And McKinsey and BCG went, gosh, you got to have some Agile. And we got into the whole scaling frameworks and the scaling wars, right? And 2010, we saw the boost of it. And kudos to Dean Leffingwell. Like, if you want to scale and you're concerned about risk, what framework are you going to use? Well, you want to use the safest framework. Genius marketing proposition, right? And so we saw the explosion of scaling and this whole concept of cookie cutter Agile getting rolled out through the 2010s into the time of COVID. And then COVID happened and everyone went digital overnight. And so then I've noticed over the last couple of years this profusion of LinkedIn. Oh, by the way, LinkedIn's not real, but it's work Facebook. You know, have you got that friend who's got the perfect Facebook life? You know, they're always out there having fun with their kids, and you know everything's perfect because it's Facebook. You get a lot of that on LinkedIn as well, but Agile's dead on LinkedIn. Like it's died more times than the Doctor Who. So if we're thinking about Agile as a person, Agile's middle-aged, right? Agile's settled down. It's no longer going out to parties till 4 o'clock in the morning. I was wandering around a garden center with my wife, which dates me, and we saw a cushion that said, please leave by 9. It's like, all the young people are like, what? 9's when the party starts. It's not when you're 50. So Agile's middle-aged. So if we think about that in technology adoption patterns, we have this classic technology adoption life cycle. If your organization is just starting to get into Agile now, you're either part of the late majority or a laggard. Like if your company has never done any agile, you're well late in adopting. I have clients that are on their 4th or 5th agile adoption. I've had clients where you cannot talk about Scrum, Kanban, or Agile because the words have been burnt by zealots. And you've had the Agile jihads come through, you know, the Scrum jihads, and it's nonsense. All right, so we've hit this point in the Gartner hype cycle, and Jürgen referred to this yesterday. We're over the hype of the inflated expectations. And I think we're just starting to come out of the trough of disillusionment, because we realize that blind mechanical implementation is no longer feasible. That just simply copying patterns will not help our organizations. So what we're seeing is the death of lazy agile, agile theater, and now professional agile has got its space to grow and blossom. And my invitation for all of you, when you step away from the conference, there's been some great and inspiring discussions. What's the one smallest thing you can do to lift the level of professionalism in your organization? And that's grown up agile. So, behavior excused in a child due to immaturity is unacceptable in an adult who should know better. Right? The first time can everyone remember the first time you got really drunk? Like proper drunk. You know, really, like, you know, you didn't quite make it into the house. Hopefully, if you're from Poland, it wasn't in winter. Right? But, you know, and your parents are just like, oh, you fool. Whereas, you know, as you get older, your kids will turn around to you and go, you behaved very badly last night, right? But what was acceptable when I was 18, sort of, is completely unacceptable now. The other interesting thing as you get older is the recovery time is just insane, right? If you're 18, 20, you go out and you're like Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Yeah, that's the weekend. Now one night. And it's got to be on a Friday or a Saturday to give me time to be functional by Monday. So let's think about some examples of that. Now, very immature behavior is people who don't get agile, but have seen it say, oh, we're doing Scrum or Kanban, we can't give you dates or costs, which is nonsense. We can, but there needs to be a probabilistic framing around it. But if we're talking to a professional business, we do need to talk about schedules. We do need to talk about spend. And if you can't read a balance sheet, how dare you try and talk to a business about their operating model? If you cannot read a balance sheet, if you cannot read a P&L, you're not a business coach. Let's put that on the table. And so we need to be communicating forecasts, communicating uncertainty, and running it in terms of experiments. Have you ever encountered an agile team that says, oh, we're an empowered team, we can do whatever we want? Has anyone seen that team? Yeah, no, you're taking a paycheck. And I saw this at one organization that grew very quickly. They had 7 different ways of accessing a database, and they had 8 different logging mechanisms. Congratulations, you've now made 56 pathways to test to access a database and log it. You have just created a massive amount of technical debt because of your lack of professionalism. And do you know what? It wasn't the team had the problem there. The challenge there was the leadership were not holding the team accountable, and also the leadership were not making the constraints clear enough to the team. This is the boundary you play in. Now, if you don't know the constraints, you can't work within them. And so one of the most important things we need to do is ask questions, be curious, and go, what are my boundaries? Is it time? Is it cost? Is it material? Is it technology? Whatever. And then honoring them. And then that leads us into not engaging with the leadership. And thinking about our leadership as catalysts. Oh, don't know why that went backwards. So this is where we then see agile theatre, where we have some sort of board, we have tickets, we don't really have a purpose. Or one of my pet hates is where we're all focused on a happy team. Now, the happiest teams I've ever worked with aren't doing fun and crazy retros. Oh, it's May the 4th, let's do the Star Wars retro. No, they have a very short reflection and go, what's the one thing we can do to be more awesome next iteration? And they do it. So the focus is on delivery. The focus is on value, with connecting with that. And that's the point of Agile. So we know enough now. It's been around long enough. We can all tell when there's poor behaviors. We can all tell when the framework fascists come in and going, oh, you haven't got a service level expectation on that particular column. That's not a proper Kanban board. Or your daily scrum is 16 minutes long. Now, having said that, if you are running 45-minute daily scrums, you've completely missed the point. And they're probably a project status report, which means you've become unattached from the framework or the intent. And this is what we call, well, I call agile theatre. A lot of other people call it agile theatre. It looks like agile, but it isn't improving. It isn't delivering value. It isn't running things as product. And it's ineffective. So all these organizations that really struggled to implement some form of agile, they then went to DevOps, right? They couldn't do Scrum properly, so they then invented DevOps. So what's DevOps? DevOps is just XP or Scrum done properly. It means you get to done and you get it to your customer, but we sucked at that, so we binned that off, and then we went into a scaling pattern. So then we implemented less or Scrum at scale or safe or whatever, but that didn't work, so we binned that off, and now we're doing product. Now the last three have been absolutely stellar implementations, so I can see the product implementation just going as fearlessly, but product's not working so well for us, so what we need to do is augment it with AI. And then we'll complain that all of this stuff doesn't work, whereas actually the core at all of it is the inability of our organizations to make small, continuous improvements. And that's the essence of agility. Like if I want to lose weight, I don't try and lose 10 kilos. The easiest way to do that, cut off a leg, but that's really going to be life-changing. So probably better that I just like drank less beer and did a little bit more walking. But that's hard. Yeah, change is hard. So let me give you a parable. Most organizations, they don't talk to their customers. Their leaders don't really think things through, and they've got a pile of requirements that are just sitting there like a pile of dung. One of my clients, their oldest thing on their product backlog was 17 years old when they implemented TIS was Team Foundation Server. And they didn't get rid of it. 17-year-old product backlog item. Anyway, their dev teams weren't performing so well, so it was like having an old propeller driven, like an old biplane engine sitting there. That was their dev teams. And of course, they were financial institutions, so they were very secure. And so getting stuff to the customer was like a brick wall. And their customer was on the other end. Anyway, the changes would waft through over these piles, and generally the latest thing to get thrown on top of the backlog would get picked up and wafted through this very slow process engine over the brick wall and eventually get to the customer, who was mildly happy that there was some sort of change. Does anyone recognize this story? Let's see if your hands go up. But of course we go agile, right? Somebody goes to a conference and goes, hey, I found this great thing. It's called agile. We can build faster. Awesome. But we don't fix the other problems. We don't fix the fact that we still have this pile of stuff that someone's product promised our stakeholders. We haven't really addressed some of the challenges we have in getting stuff to our customer. So our customer's still sitting there, hopefully. But what we've done is we've just replaced the old propeller engine with a jet engine. And jets are great, right? Suck, squeeze, bang, blow. They just take huge amounts of air, get them through the engine, and they fire it out the back end at pace, and you go faster. Awesome. We have upgraded our engineering teams. Brilliant. But we haven't changed our product perspective. We haven't changed our leadership or encouraging our teams to do things differently. So what we do is we suck in this huge pile of rotting, fetid requirements, and we spatter them over the wall, and a few of them manage to hit our poor, unlucky customer in the face. So we have now spattered hot shit onto our customers, and we wonder why our customer satisfaction scores go down, and our product people going, this isn't how this is meant to work. And maybe your customers hang around. And we've all heard parables of this or stories of this. Like, I've got some horrible examples for you. In the UK, the most horrible example of this was the Horizon system. That was the postmaster's system, and they put in a new IT system, and people went to prison because the system didn't work, and they said they were defrauding them. Like, this stuff's real. There's a Mercedes developer currently in prison because of the tweaks. So the car was able to detect. No, Volkswagen, sorry, not Mercedes. Whoops. Please change that. Edit that one out. Yeah, so this stuff happens, right? We've got some weird stuff going on in our companies. So my invitation for you is, please do not tolerate the theatre anymore. I don't care what framework you're using. More importantly, I don't care if you don't use a framework. It's exactly like Evie was saying. It's like, you're all individuals. Your company is individual. I love it whenever a client comes to me and says, oh, we want to use the Spotify model. And I'm like, great. Are you a Swedish music streaming company? And they go, no. I'm like, why are you using their model? So effectively, you're going to have to grow your own. You're going to have to add on top of it. So building that cross-organization engagement, how are you collaborating with finance, with procurement, with risk, with ops? How are you really making life better for your customer? And then focus on outcomes and be prepared to change. So what you're going to have to do is be scientific about it. Hey, if we try this, this might work. Now, if you only release once a year, your feedback loops are problematic. So you probably really need to get into that cross-organization enablement to do Agile properly. So back to basics, right? Now, the model I use for this, we need to work with our leaders. It's time, Agile's missed this, and as we've heard this a few times yesterday, we, as Agilists, have let our leadership down by not helping them understand they are accountable for giving us a direction of travel, for communicating that purpose, what we need to do, and the style in which we need to do it. The second thing we need to do is we must make sure the constraints are communicated clearly. We know what boundaries we're operating in, and we have agreed them with our leadership so that they're explicit, clear, and actionable. Now, if we can do that, and when we deliver within these constraints towards our purpose, we'll build trust. Now, there's a really nice loop between constraints and trust. Have you noticed that the people you trust the most, you give the least constraints to? Because you trust them, you know that they're going to come and check in going, yeah, this might be on the boundary. What do you think about this? Whereas if somebody doesn't have a lot of trust capital, you'll be very clear about the constraints. And then we can iterate on it. And it's a very simple model. And like all models, it's, can be wrong. The point is, it's easy to communicate. And the more complex the model, the more complex the framework, the harder it is to get alignment because it's easier to get it confused about. And this is why the compelling vision of truly visionary companies and leaders, it's very clear we're going that way. And here's our boundaries. So if we can help our leadership do this, we can help our leadership create the environment for our teams and our products to be successful. It's time to go beyond frameworks. It's time to get back to the essence of agility as a grown-up. We need to be comfortable in process variation. I don't really care what flavor of whatever you're doing, as long as it works for you. It needs to be lightweight. It needs to be simple to enable it to scale. What has to work is information flow, so that information can go up and down quickly, so that fast decisions can be made. Short, clear feedback loops. So if your leadership can have a daily reflection, that means that any challenge or problem a team is having should be escalated to the highest level that it needs to within 24 hours. So it goes up and back to the team within 24 hours. This is your single biggest challenge. If you're an agile coach, a scrum master, trying to get an answer in 24 hours is very hard. And then we get to the absolute core of it, of regular delivery and iterative and incremental change and growth. It's time to stop pretending. It's time to stop saying, yeah, we're agile when we know we're not. You know, I've tired of so many times I go into a client and they go, oh, could you come and tell us about our Scrum? Because I'm a professional Scrum trainer, I've got a certain view of Scrum. It's like, and it's basically a checklist. It's like 14 elements. And it starts with like, do you create a done product? And they're like, a what product? It's like, well, you're not doing Scrum. But basically, if you can tick all 14, well, what does that mean? It's not like Ken and Jeff are going to fly in and give you a gold star and an elephant stamp for doing Scrum. They don't care. What they did say is that it's a base of a framework for you to do what you want with. And your frameworks are going to start being blended with other frameworks. I think it's great that the PMI have bought the Agile Alliance, because the Agile Alliance was sort of losing its direction and intention. It also means that Agile is now mainstream. I think it's a positive. You can either say, oh, you know, what are the two, does anyone remember the Muppet Show? So I'm a child of the 80s. So the Muppet Show, there are these two really famous characters. They're the old guys that used to sit on the corner, Waldorf and Statler. They're beautiful. They're just, get off my lawn type guys. There's always going to be someone going, oh, that's not right. That change is not good. Well, change is. And if you're working with big databases, you know you can only change forward. If you've got a terabyte of data, there's no rollback. Organizations and people are like that. Why? Because time is a constraint of the human condition and we can only go forward. We can remember backwards, but we can only move forward. So we need to think about layering things up. There's no singular way to deliver. To take something out of complete left field, one of the things I work with is lean agile procurement. And what we do is we use a canvas to define agreements between partners. I've used this within organizations when I'm trying to get teams to talk to each other. You know how Jürgen yesterday was talking about the AI and the interface? This is an interface definition canvas. So on the left-hand side is, you know, the person who wants something. On the right-hand side, the person who's going to give it to them. In the middle is the win-win. So we've got to look for the win-win. And Jürgen also talked about hire, and hire have this concept called Reindl. And basically, where China is flourishing and hire are leading the way in this is creating ecosystems. And a successful organization going forward will create a rainforest where multiple partners grow together. And I've got a unique view of that. I live in a town called Swindon in UK, and we used to have a very big factory for Honda. And Honda said, like, if you do Brexit, we're out of here. And of course, the UK did Brexit, which is one of the biggest self-inflicted stupidities of modern history. Honda's gone. And you can see it's just ripped the heart out of the town. And the thing is, oh, Honda's gone. Yeah, but so have all the organizations that were working with Honda. All the people who are providing parts, all the way down to the people who are providing lunch to the 20,000 people that were working there. The only way your organization will survive in an increasingly crazy world is by building resilience through an ecosystem. If you're an independent, you're going to work with other people. If you're a very large organization, you're going to have multiple partners. It's an ecosystem. So this is another way of thinking about it. So to summarize, Agile's grown up. It's time for Agile to act like an adult. The process wars are over. Who cares? If you aren't delivering value, you will be put aside. It's as simple as that. If you're not adding to the bottom line, if you're not improving your balance sheet for your organization or achieving the social impact if you're a charity, you're gone. You're not helping. I don't really care whether you have fun retros or whether you use beanbags in your teen room. Shut up and deliver. And then we have to embrace new tech in an empirical manner. So we need to embrace AI, other tooling, whatever, but we need to do it in a controlled product way. So we're going to have to create a hypothesis. We believe if we do this, we'll get that. And then we need to test the hypothesis. Thank you for listening to me. I'm around for the rest of today. Come up and have a chat if you'd like to. Thank you.